Hello, I'm Rachel from Dwensa Garden in Ireland, and I'm behind the camera today to give you my March garden tour. Now, it's very early in the season still, but it's the time when things begin to wake up properly in the garden. We have primroses, we have the amazing daffodils, we have hyacinths, we have, well, various other things that you're going to share with me today as we walk around my garden here in Wexford, Ireland. Now, my garden is in zone 9, or roughly equates to zone 9. We don't actually do zones here in Ireland. And it's an acre in size, which is about a half a hectare. So I'm not going to show you it all today, but we're going to have a look at what's looking good this spring. So come with me and let's enjoy my garden in March. Now we're going to take a little stroll down this path here, which is right beside my patio windows. And I love in springtime to look out and see the daffodils and the hyacinths with all their colour, and to know that if I were to step out into the garden, it would be even better because the scent would just come to me in great wafts. The hyacinths are almost fully open now, and these are ones that I originally bought to grow in glasses in the house or in pots in the greenhouse. And when they had finished flowering, then I put them out here in the garden, and they've done so well ever since. Now, hyacinths never flower as fully when you, well, I guess from the second year round, but some of these are really quite good considering how long they've been down here. It's actually hard to capture the full colour of these blue hyacinths because there's blue and there's purple in there, but there's a luminance that just radiates from the flowers. I think it's so pretty, and the blue ones are just as prettily scented as the pink and white. And peonies are beginning to poke up already, which is just the best news ever. I love herbaceous peonies, and it's time to start putting supports around them to make sure that I don't forget a bit later on. As you can see, my double daffodils they're not completely in bloom yet, but the ones on this side are in more bloom than the other side, perhaps because there's more light. And you can't fully see how double they're going to be because when they open first, it looks, well, you know, it takes a while for the flowers to fill out in the centre. But I love them. I love when the sun catches them. They're just wonderful. Now, of course, the problem with big daffodils is that you can't plant anything else in that spot. It has to be just for the daffodils because the large foliage that you can't cut back until it dies back naturally, that is going to overwhelm any adjacent plants. And they're not going to do well. So I'm happy to just give this spot to the double daffodils and let them do their stuff. And look how well that tiny little cherry blossom tree that I planted last year is doing. It is starting into flower now, and there are more buds, so there's more coming. I really love this little thing, and I've underplanted it with the black grass, which I think shows off those white flowers really well. I've already seen some bees buzzing around here, which is such a welcome sight. Now, you may think it's looking a bit bare over here, but you have to consider that this whole area is planted with bloodroot. And it's such beautiful spring flower that's just poking up now and should regale us with its double white flowers in a very short period of time. So that's what the big space is. But if you can look there, you can see that there are little primroses dotted around. And these are the ones that I bought in a big primrose haul. I made an unboxing video last spring, and so many of them are doing really well. With primroses, I do like to have big swathes of the same colour. Obviously, I wasn't able to do that when I bought a whole variety of different ones. So I've put them in the ground and we're going to see which ones do really well. And those are going to be divided and they're going to have their own patch. So each one will have its own patch. The double red will have like a whole swathe that is just going to be double red primrose in early spring. But we'll have to see over time how they perform. Now, although I've cleared this bed a couple of times, you can see that there are still leaves from the blooming Cordyline falling down, and they'll continue to fall down all season. That's this funny looking guy here on the left, down there on top of my erythroniums and my bloodroot that we can't yet see. A lot of people grow Cordyline australis in Ireland along the coast because we have a mild climate and we grow it thinking it looks like a palm tree, and it does have that seasidey holiday feel about it. But the downside is that it constantly sheds its lower skirt of leaves, and and they can scatter around your border, which isn't great. So we're now looking through this border here on my left across to the Sarracenia plantar border. I don't know if you can quite make out those stone structures poking between the Melanoselinum. But what I want to tell you about here is the Melanoselinum, which is the tall plants here on the right. So these are from Madeira, native to Madeira Island off Africa, and they're hardy for me. It's a monocarpic plant, so once it flowers it dies, and the end result is that it produces loads and loads of seedlings. So in spring, because I do want Melanoselinum in this particular part of the border, in spring what I need to do is rearrange those seedlings, take out a lot of them, and then just replant several of them in spots where they have a bit more space, just at the foot of where their parent plant was. This here is a cardoon, and I absolutely love it for its foliage. It's kind of glaucous and grey and makes a fantastic backdrop to so many things. Now this will get big as the season progresses, but for the moment it's a very kind of neat and polite size. And as you can see, in this bed here we have the purple primrose called Marie Crousse, which has been let do her thing in this particular spot, except for a few of the glory of the snow which are scattered here at the top. And here's a little close-up of those glory of the snow. Now you have to be so careful with these little fellows when you do any replanting in the border during the summer, because you can see no evidence of them, and as you dig then you start unearthing the little bulbs. So I just pop them back in again, and yeah, and they do grand. So now we're just taking a little pan up from the glory of the snow and the primroses through the Scilla magnolia tree, and I don't know if you can see in the far distance there, but my Magnolia Star Wars is just coming into bloom, but only high up. The magnolia tree on the left, it's producing its very first flowers at the moment. Always so very, very welcome, but things do seem to be a bit behind this year. Over here, the primrose known as Dawn Ansel is strutting her stuff, and these hyacinths are a little bit later than the ones we just looked at. On this side we can see that my favourite euphorbia is doing really well and just coming into bloom with its acid green flowers. Absolutely love this guy. Euphorbias have so much value in the garden because they're grown very much for their leaves. They always look good with these gorgeous, mostly evergreen leaves, although there are a lot of euphorbias out there, some of which are completely deciduous, but this one is evergreen, and the dark leaves look super even through the winter. And then you get these super acid green flowers which really brighten up the whole place. I always think it funny at this time of year to be able to see how the garden is composed, because when you approach the garden in summer there's so much lush growth from perennials that you can't see through to other garden rooms. But here at the moment, if you look over there on the right, there's a little spot of green, and that's the path we were just walking down there a moment ago, full of spring things. And this border here is full of gaps now, but very soon it's going to be awash with the tulips first, and then the peonies, and then we'll have geraniums and Melanoselinum and all kinds of good things in bloom. So it's all to look forward to. As you can see, the Cerinthe seedlings are doing so well, and these are ones, they're volunteers, they just self-seed in this border, and I manage them a little bit in the same way as I manage the Melanoselinum, which is a much bigger plant. But with these annual Cerinthe, I remove seedlings that are too closely together, just leaving one or two near the edge, and move some of them around and just manage them in that way so that they're popping up where I want them to pop up and not where they're just going to be a nuisance. The Sarracenia have been cut back now, and those two brick structures you see there are actually Sarracenia beds or planters holding carnivorous Sarracenia plants. In spring they get cut back and then they flower, and the flowers are gorgeous, so I hope to share those with you very soon. And this euphorbia that I planted, you may recall that I planted up this border last summer or spring, and the euphorbia is doing so well. Now these guys, this particular type of euphorbia just does so well if given enough space and if given enough sun. And last autumn I planted up this bed too with tulips, so I can't wait to see how they look. So now we're going to leave this section behind and take a little meander down here where I've been doing some weeding. Surprise, surprise, it is the time of year for it, and we'll see if we can find something that's worth looking at. And the first thing we encounter on this stretch is the hellebore bed, which is planted on the drive and kind of just flanks where we're walking down. It's really encouraging to see some bees out and about and enjoying my plants. Here's another clump of that blue hyacinth. And if you look closely, you can see how, this has been down here for years, and it isn't flowering as perfectly as one might find the first year, but it's really not bad at all, so really don't discard your hyacinths after you enjoy them in pots. Do put them in the garden, because you can get this. It's pretty good. And travelling just a little bit further down, you can see that my Stipa gigantea is still needing a cutback. That hasn't happened yet. I might do that today. But other than that, I've a bit of weeding to do yet, but down this section of the garden is looking good. Primrose Avondale, which I showed you in my last video, is doing well, and the irises in front, bearded irises, are, I'm glad I cleared back this bed earlier, because it means that any sun that we have can get on the rhizomes of the bearded irises and just hopefully help them to flower better. And here we have Primrose Avondale, which is one of my absolute favourites. Now, if you're looking for a primrose that is vigorous and is going to bulk up in a short time, providing you with lots of healthy plant material to divide and spread around your garden, then this is the one for you, especially if you like the look of the flowers. And I love the look of these flowers. I think they're just gorgeous. The flowers are pale pink, with a couple of white stripes emanating from the yellow centre out to the edge of the petals, and I think it's just such a beautiful thing. And another great thing about it is the fact that the foliage is green. Now, purple foliage is very fashionable at the moment, especially in primroses. I think purple foliage is wonderful in a garden in summer, but not in spring. In spring you want green leaves against the dark brown of your earth, not brown against brown, which the dark foliage of primroses provides, because it just doesn't provide enough of a contrast. So yeah, Primrose Avondale in my books, a wonderful one. So let's just have a bit of a pan of this section of the garden. We have the cloud pruning bucks ball area, we have the more bucks surrounded cherry tree, and we swing on over to the edge of this border here on the right, which will soon be full of rhododendrons in flower and other things. And this bed here, which was full of snowdrops not very long ago, is finished with the snowdrops, so we're just waiting for the perennials to poke up and get going. Rhododendron Christmas cheer has gone past her best by date. Remember how gorgeous she was looking in the last video? Well, now we only have a few flowers. And here we have a glance at the long border, which is in its downtime. There are tulips coming though. And okay, before somebody makes a comment down below, this is what my soil is like. I have really stony soil. I haven't laid a mulch of stone on the surface of the border or anything like that. This is just naturally what it's like. So although the soil is very stony, once plants get established in it, they seem to do really well. Okay, so I tell you what we're going to do now. We're going to go up to the very top of the garden where the greenhouse is, and I'm going to show you a couple of things there, including the bed that I planted up with daylilies just last year. And here we have a little glance at my crocuses that were doing so well in the last garden tour visit, the February tour. And I think it's very funny that they have been joined by the glory of the snow on the right hand side of the border, and I think the two of them together kind of smiling at each other makes a lovely sight. It was actually unintentional, but great stuff. The crocuses have gone past their sell-by date, as you can see, but they still provide a little bit of colour, and it was just so surprising to see the blue glory of the snow pop up beside them, full of youthful exuberance. As you can see, the crocuses are just on one side of this cherry blossom tree, but I really would like to extend it over to round the back here, because this is a section of lawn that doesn't have anything else planted in it, and it would be easy enough just to keep a chunk that doesn't get mowed until later in the season. So here we are over at the business end of the garden, and this is my glass house, and then just in front of it here we have my new greenhouse. And as you can see, I have the pots of tulips that we planted last autumn in front of the greenhouse, waiting to strut their stuff. And in this bed just beside the glass house we have the daylilies that I planted up, and they're doing so well. Now last autumn I did plant tulips in between the daylilies, so I can't wait for these to flower. And the greenhouse is of course coming into its own now. March is the perfect time for sowing seeds, and I have so many of them coming, but that's the subject for another video. And my daffodils in pots in the greenhouse are doing really well. I absolutely love this one called Obdum. And the orange hyacinth is looking really well, although this is a very pale orange, almost a peach. Well, we started this garden tour video with daffodils, so it's quite fitting that at the end we should do a full circle and end up with daffodils as well. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're enjoying your own garden, and I'd love to hear what you have in flower at the moment, especially if it's something that I don't have in flower in my garden, because it's always interesting to add that little something extra in. We're all on the lookout for new plants, aren't we? Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Bye!